Hello, everyone, and welcome to Real Talk. We're happy to have you joining us and choosing to spend this part of your day with us. This is part 2 of pension funds and life covers. Last week, we were very technical, looking at the technical aspects of pension funds and life covers. And today, we will be spending most of the show answering questions that you have posed to us based on last week's show. But if you didn't get an opportunity to get in touch with us during the week with your questions, please feel free to still ask your questions as always through Facebook, YouTube, or by making use of the number that will appear on your screen. If you don't want to be known, you can still communicate with us, and I'm sure you know by now that we will protect your identity and still address your questions and comments. I will ask Sam to bring our panel on screen. Joining us on Real Talk for the very first time is the pension director at the South African Union Conference, as well as a financial advisor, Warren, right here in Namibia, who will also be. It is a good afternoon to you, Ruth. We're happy to have you here on Real Talk in Namibia. And how are things over there in South Africa?
Good afternoon, Sonia. The weather is absolutely beautiful for a cold winter's day. It's beautiful, warm sunshine. And yes, it's a wonderful Sabbath afternoon. Awesome.
A wonderful day to talk about pensions and retirement.
There we go. Yes, absolutely.
It's a good afternoon to you too as well, Warren. We're happy to have you joining us for the first time on the show. Thank you for taking time out to chat with us. How are you doing?
Good afternoon, Sonia, and good afternoon, Ruth. And thank you for having me.
Thank you. We're looking forward to picking your brain because we're living in now, we have to be forward thinking. And when you can get a financial advisor coming online, we definitely will be making use of you today.
Always a good time to be talking about.
Absolutely.
Yes, every time is always a good time. Really ask you to open in prayer, please, as we get into our show for today.
Sure we can. Let's close our eyes. Father God, we thank you. We are your children and that you are interested in all the details of our lives. We will be discussing a very important element of our lives, and I pray that you give us wisdom, discernment, and understanding, and that as we will share ideas, we will be able to learn and grow from each other, as well as from the questions that have been posed, so that we may do the best for ourselves, for our families, and those around us. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Perhaps, Ruth, let me just start with you before I go to Warren for a bit of technical explanations. I mean, as a church, we believe that even if we rest in the grave, or if we are alive until Jesus comes, we are preparing for a better place, a better home. We're going to say goodbye to this earth, and there will be a new heaven and a new earth, and we will spend eternity with our Father. Church feel that it is important to even bring up this idea of pension funds and this idea of estate planning. Focus.
So, Sonia, we are definitely bound for that great city, Jerusalem. But until that time, we have got to live here. And when we finish our working career and we retire, and that is the aim of my department, dignity at retirement. That is our entire aim, because when we leave the employ of the church, we want to know that our members are taken care of, they are able to sustain themselves, they are able to live lives that matter, and also live in a way that still brings dignity to their station and how they have worked and so on. Well, there's been an era that has gone past, but we firmly believe, and that's why we have a pension fund as opposed to a provident fund, where we will make sure that a member in retirement has a monthly income to sustain them over the years post-retirement. And I'm sure you've covered it, but let me say it again. The longevity a major issue. People are so much healthier. We are living so much longer. And so we have got to provide for hitting the 80s, and some even surprise us and go to 100, So we have got to be prepared post-retirement.
You know, Warren, she just raised some fund. She talked about pension fund, provident fund. And maybe just for the benefit of those who are just joining us today, you could explain what a pension fund is, what a provident fund is, life cover. I mean, you talk about things, benefit plans and things like that. What is it, and how does one actually participate in those things?
She's raised a lot of interesting things, right? The health matter in terms of longevity is definitely one insurer point of view that we definitely are experiencing and facing at the moment. So just in terms of the differences, so you have a retirement fund in terms of holistic funding towards your retirement, and that's split between a pension fund and a provident fund. The difference with that is of course taxation. Taxation, the benefit that you get towards when you do retire. But the biggest difference there is the pension fund it's a regulatory requirement within both the Namibian as well as the South African countries, that you buy with the 2/3 that you buy a pension for yourself as you go into your retirement. And then for the provident fund, you have the option of not doing that, and you could take your full fund credit, as they call it, in cash. Of course, coming from an insurer as well as from a pension fund perspective, we don't think that's the best in the best interest of the members, right? Because as we know, the bulk of members within these funds are possibly not as financially literate as they should be. And then, of course, use all of that money, and within the next 5 years, they find themselves destitute and then looking to possibly going back into employment. That's not what you want. You want those glory years. You've worked for 60 or 61 or 65 years of your life, and now or let's say 45, and now you want to retire comfortably. But with a provident fund, we find most times people don't do that because they don't have, that discipline to be able to have that money outlive them, if you can call it, and then still look at how do you fund for that wealth element that you want with your kids as well as your family. In terms of life covers is basically something that started centuries ago, 1800s, right? And it happened in your European countries, in the London elements. There's been history that it has started also parts of it in China, as merchants looked at how they insure their goods as the goods entered, goes from one continent to the next continent. But ideally what it does is, from a life cover point of view, it covers your income. If you're the main breadwinner for your family, you're the husband or you're the wife, and all of that, it covers your family in the unfortunate event that you pass away. And then it will cover them in terms of what you and your employer has decided, or actually what your employer has decided would be the annual amount that it will cover you for. And then that amount will be paid out to your nominated dependents. And then, of course, with life covers, there's other elements that you could look at. It just covers you for, of course, initially, if you pass away. There's elements where it covers you for disability as well. And then there's various options of how you could choose. Is it a once-off payment? Does it look at income replacement? So paying a percentage of your salary for the period that you're disabled, and then you come back to work. And then, of course, there's funeral covers and lifestyle disease covers now, as we see. People live longer, but people work harder. They sit in chairs, they don't exercise enough, and then they get these different ailments, the rise of cancers, the rise of all of those heart diseases amongst young people. These are all things that have now increased within the environments that we operate. And insurers will be able to cover yourself as well as your employer on those different covers. I hope I've answered most of the questions.
Yeah, and you've raised some interesting points. Would you say that people are more engaged in insurance now than maybe 50 years ago?
I would like to think so. I said I would like to think so, but I definitely do know that it's not something that, especially within our Black communities, we're comfortable to talk about. I joined the industry, and I make a joke about it. I joined this industry by fluke, right? I worked outside of the country for a number of years. I worked in Angola, and I then felt, okay, now I want to do qualification. And then I know I needed to come back to Namibia, and I needed to be with a corporate. The insurance industry was one of the industries that that welcomed me. And just after that, it became my passion. I enjoyed it. I enjoy engaging with the individuals and giving them that financial advice, right? But at the end of the day, I feel that it's something that is still a grudge purchase, and people don't actively seek their advice, and they don't actively seek to improve their financial situations.
Thank you so much. Let me just take some time to greet our friends tuning in online the world. We're happy to have you here on Real Talk. It's a good afternoon to you, Precious, to Marco, to Denford, to Lulu. And I see that we're calling a lot of friends to come and listen to today's show and to watch today's show. This is an interesting show indeed. And as Warren says, it's not a topic that everybody about, because we really don't want to think about what should happen in case we are no longer there for our families, what should happen in case we can't work. We would rather just stay in this fantasy world of thinking that we will always be able to provide for our families. Ruth, there may be those people who also love to work for the Lord, and they love to give towards the cause of the Lord. Could they take out life cover for the church? Is that possible?
Are you talking about within the work environment, or do you want me to go broader?
A regular person like myself, yeah? Is
Okay.
it possible to set up something for the church?
Yes, the church has life cover. But within the context of our workers, only at this stage, the church provides for the workers only on its pension fund. We have life cover, and we have disability cover as part of our pension provisions, because we like your show says, we live in a real world, and in the real world, people do die, and they pass away, and then we need, there's this family that is destitute, and possibly, and especially in the context of the church, let me say this, because the bulk of the employees of the church is pastors. And by the nature of the pastor's job, he moves every 3 years, sometimes 5 years. And so the wives are the one who inevitably cannot keep a permanent job. And so they move around. So they don't always have permanent employee. And so, then we find, unless we have, say, a teacher or maybe a nursing sister, they will find them not being able to keep a job. And so the wife is reliant on the husband for that income. And so when the source of that income passes away, there has to be a take care of the wife, to take care of the children. And so, yes, we have life cover in place. What am I finding in general? I'm finding in general that our young people are becoming much more savvy in terms of understanding. I'm finding it very refreshing. We have started Zoom sessions, quarterly Zoom sessions, to talk about relevant things, just to spark the interest and generate discussions about these matters. And more the young people are coming on board, asking the questions, getting signed up. So there is a shift, and maybe it's not enough, the percentage isn't high enough, but there's certainly a greater interest for me in terms of providing for your loved ones in terms of life cover. I find that even our members on the pension fund, they also have private policies, life policies, so that they are amply covered in terms of what the church could offer, but also in their private capacity.
Thank you so much. Warren, we received this question during the week. The question says, there are some people who believe that insurance is a waste of money. Is that a valid claim? Insurance is a waste of money.
I chuckle because I think I made reference to it earlier, where I said it's people always deem it to be a grudge purchase, right? So why, I guess the bulk of people would be paying it, and then they maybe never claim a life cover. But I mean, we're certain of two things, guys. As Ruth has mentioned, regardless of your stature in life, we would all die one day. That's death and taxes is what I always say. We're certain of those two things. We never run away from it. So clearly I'm in the industry, and this might be a biased element from myself, but I definitely don't think it's a waste of money. I do believe that initially it was only seen as life cover, so to cover you as you pass away. But as we've seen, those are not the only things that you could get cover for. As a black person in the black community, most of the times when a family member passes away, you would then find, regardless of their stature in life or where they worked or what designation they kept at an organization, some of them might not even have funeral covers. And what does that mean? It falls back on the family now to reach in our pockets. As a community, as we know, you're not raised by one person, you're raised by a community, and then you need to stand in, right? So those are also elements that you need to look at, of how do you ensure that when you pass away, we're all about dignified burials, but how do you also ensure that you don't leave that burden on your family? How do you ensure that from an employer point of view, that you increase your marketability as an organization or as an employer, to just not look at a life cover, but you look at how do you aid your employees in different stages of their life where they really need assistance, when they become disabled, when they're involved in a car accident, when they diagnosed with cancers or all of these ailments. And that's definitely why insurance is there, to be able to provide you with that insurance, that if this event takes place, that an insurer would be able to cover you for those different events. So in my mind, I would not say yes. Livelihood is dependent on it, but I've definitely seen the value of having these different covers, and how it has aided either the individual themselves or the family that has been left behind.
Someone once described medical insurance to me as paying for a risk. Paying for a risk, because you could pay for medical insurance and you may never use it. But if one day you need it and you don't have it, then, you would feel the pinch of not having it. People are more, willing to pay for medical insurance than they would be to take out life insurance. What?
I think there's not a yes and a no answer to that question. I think it's dependent on where you are in your point in life. As a younger person, I never even thought about medical aid, right? I joined an employer. They gave that, they paid a portion and I paid a portion. And I would maybe use my medical aid once a year. But as I grew older, you're more prone to ailments. You go to the doctor more often. You see, now you open up your statement, you see what things actually cost, what a consultation costs. It's like $1,600. You spend one day in the hospital, you see what that costs. So once you actually see the cost of paying those things, you really ask yourself, would I have the disposable income should this event happen to me, that I can pay that out of pocket? And that's actually where you see the value. So it's across different boards, right? But I definitely think in all ages, being it medical insurance or medical aid is important, especially now with Corona. We've definitely seen had across the board, adults, children, whatever, flus. Those are really not things, if you're still struggling to make ends meet, that you can pay out of pocket.
Okay, thank you so much. We have a question here that says, is it wise to really leave all our hard-earned money to the church and not find a financial plan to share the money among our children? Is it not negligent to leave nothing behind for our children and donating everything to the less privileged? This is a follow-up from last week's show, but I'll pose it to you. Would you like me to take the question again?
No. You can just read it again, because I think I have a grasp of it. But please read it again, repeat it.
Okay, sure. It's wise to really leave all our hard-earned money to the church and not find a financial plan to share the money among our children. Is it not negligent to leave nothing behind for our children and donate everything to the less privileged?
So the question kind of is not a very good understanding of investment in a pension fund. When we invest in a pension fund, the money isn't left to the church. So when we and unless I'm talking in the wrong context, if I'm understanding the question correctly, but if you're working for the church and you are investing in a fund, you are saving towards your retirement. if anything should happen to you, your loved ones will be the beneficiaries of the monies that have been retirement. Nothing in that aspect. In fact, the church is actually the biggest contributor towards your pension fund. The church pays actually more than what our members do towards the pension fund, because we are passionate about our members retiring with dignity and after serving God's church faithfully, that they are taken care of, and we can make sure that they have a pension and a place to live and things like that. When they pass away, the money that they have saved towards retirement goes towards their loved ones. So it's definitely not invested. I'm not sure if they are referring to the fact that the church has a world, a facility, or the platform where we could have, through our legal department, have your will set up for you, and then the church of your estate. In that case, the church has a very small percentage but that's for the execution of the estate. In any event, it's not a profit-making exercise at all. From that aspect, there's a small amount that the church will make, but generally, all the money from your retirement fund goes towards your beneficiaries, who is generally your loved ones, those who you want to take care of in the event of your death.
Sonia, if you can allow me,
Thank you so much. Let me just give you a bit more background. This was applying to... Oh, okay, please go ahead, Warren. Yes.
So maybe just, so as Ruth has mentioned, so maybe giving context of what a pension fund is and what happens. It's not that now the church has a pension fund and then should someone pass away, that money goes to the church, right? So there's a pension fund is structured that there's a defined benefit and a defined contribution fund. There's differences in structure because when a defined benefit structure, you as an employee already know what you'll be, depending on your years of service, you know what you'll be retiring with. And then the risk with a defined contribution is that you and your employer make contributions, and then the risk of investments and all of that is between the trustees of the pension fund, and of course also the asset managers and the likes of that. The employer, which is the church in this case, gives a contribution from an employer point of view, and you as the employee gives a contribution from an employee point of view. This grows over the years of service that you've been with that employer, and then upon either your death or upon your retirement, that amount then gets paid out to whoever you have indicated as your nominated dependents or your beneficiaries. So there will never be a case where, even in the event that someone doesn't come and or ask for the money, that will ever be paid back to your employer, as there are regulatory bodies that look at that on an annual or 3-year basis to ensure that whatever the employee has paid and the employer has paid towards that employee needs to be distributed to either him or his beneficiaries.
Thank you, Warren. But are there situations where, for example, I could come and approach you and say, I would like, instead of my husband or my mom or somebody being a beneficiary, I would prefer that the church be the beneficiary of my life cover? Is that possible?
So from a life cover, in my regulatory work that I operate in, unless you've nominated possibly a trust, and then that trust says, or you have a will to say, so I pass away, my pension will be paid into my trust, and that trust then says that will be paid over to the church. But from a normal pension fund point of view, the trustees they have a mandate in terms of how they need to look at how that distribution happens. Initially, the distribution is you look at husband, wife first, you look at kids under the age limit of the majority, and then you look at whoever was nominated as factual dependents and financial dependents. That also needs to be proven by way of you ensuring that you give proof that you are financially dependent on this individual, and then only it will be paid over. So it's a regulated process. You can't. It's not that you can decide, you know what, I want to leave it to my dog, and it's going to be left to my dog.
Maybe I can just come in here, Warren.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yes, go ahead. Yeah. Yes, please.
Can I chip in? Can I chip in? So Warren, there's approved and unapproved, and remember, in our unapproved scenario, because we want the tax gets deducted up front, your beneficiary form dictates where your money will go. So in that case, and I'm referring only to your life cover portion, only to your life cover portion. And if you are an unapproved scheme fund, and you have a beneficiary form, and you dictate on there where the monies must go to, your service provider must by law pay the people that you have indicated on your beneficiary form. When it is approved, it means it's within the context of the fund, just as Warren has explained. The trustees sit down, they decide, and then that's how it was. That how it gets split. Of course, looking first at your closest beneficiary, your husband, your spouse, and your children, a minor, major, and maybe your financial dependents following on there. So in the unapproved scenario, there is that risk that sometimes it could be left to, or maybe not even left there. Let me just give you the one bane of my life, the one thing that I've been struggling with in the context of the church, because we are so trusting, and that is that we just don't bother to fill out the forms. We have another child, we just don't add that other child onto the beneficiary forms. And then we have this challenge that there's a wife and there's one child on, but there was 2 subsequent children that was never added. And now, because of the setup of our fund, because we wanted more money to go towards the family, because in death, you don't really want the tax deduction. So that's why we have chosen that option, but it necessitates that you become responsible in filling out your forms so that your loved ones can, so that everything stays up to date and everybody can get the money that they should be getting. So I just wanted to bring that element in.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Kitso, as well for your... Ruth, I'll direct this one at you as well. Kitso is asking, what kind of pension does the church employ? Is it defined benefit or defined contribution?
We originally had defined benefit, but in 2000, the church moved over to defined contribution, as has done most of. Actually, we were late in moving over. In 2000 already, in 2000, the shift from DB went to DC. You'll find the only DB funds are the government employees, the very massive organizations. They still have defined benefit funds, but in general, your most of your employers are defined contribution, and that is what the church in South Africa has. Defined contribution fund. In fact, since 2018, we have even shifted to an umbrella defined contribution fund to save even more cost and have more money go towards saving for retirement. So yes, we have a defined contribution fund.
And what is the source of the contribution that the church makes towards the retirement fund for its employees?
So, of course, as a church, you are very, for those who don't know, but as a church, the member pays, in our case, the fund that I am the principal officer of, our members pay 7.5% of their income, and then the employer pays 20% towards the pension fund. So then what is our source? Our main source of income is tithing, and from there, salaries are paid, and from the salaries, members' pension is paid, and the employer pays for the pension fund as well. So the church's main income as a head office is from tithe income from our members.
Thank you so much. Warren, another question for you. Is it wise to reinvest the 75% of my pension preservation to a business of choice? If the reinvestment fails, then will I be reimbursed for the risk taken?
Maybe can you read that again? So are we talking about this suggested split in terms of?
Yes, the 75% preservation. So I believe that the question is when you finally, because you can't take it all out at one go, but when you get the 75% preservation, is it wise to take that lump sum and put it into a business of choice? And then the person goes on to ask that if that reinvestment fails, will that person be reimbursed for that risk? I'm not sure who will be reimbursing, but as a financial advisor.
Yeah. So and then that was my confusion. So let's go back to the 75%, right? So that was part of the FIMA regulation that's supposed to hit on the 1st of October. As we know, what happened this week, the Minister of Finance said, and he feels that there was not enough engagements, there was not enough consultation. He saw the uproar from the rest of the Namibian population, and he said, no, that will be halted and will not be part of what will be hitting as the 1st of October. So that is not something that will be considered at this point in time. But as I don't think it's one fault, right? I think the idea is noble. We have seen, and this goes back to to financial literacy. We have seen people that are deemed to be very financial literate make mistakes in terms of resigning and then making use of that money to either pay off debt or to maybe going that doesn't work out, and then they're left destitute because now they're 5 years from retirement and then they've splurged all of those money, right? The idea was for the government to make it a little bit more stringent for people to splurge this money and make to the wrong use of it. However, I think other things need to be put in place initially, public health being one of them, ensuring that over of your populace is financially literate. All of these other elements need before you put forced preservation into play. But it's something that, for example, I decide I want to resign tomorrow. I take my earned retirement. Remember, the word says retirement savings. I'm not in retirement yet, right? So you should also. It's meant for when you retire, not for before you. But how can you say I'm suffering? I don't have another employment. I can't make use of that money. I can't take the money, so I'm supposed to go without eating. So there's not one answer to that question, right? It's really one that needs, and hence the minister's choice to scrap it from the initial that will be put into play.
All right, thank you so much for that. You do raise an interesting point. Intended for retirement. We would like to welcome Jabu back. So good afternoon to you, Jabu. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Sonia, for having me. And good afternoon to everyone else on the panel. I see Ruth Warren. I think I follow Warren on Twitter. So good afternoon.
And for some reason, we lost his camera feed. I hope I saw you.
Good afternoon. No, I definitely did. I just Roger.
Just on the light side, Warren, no problem. Right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lulu, for your comment. Lulu here says, it's a question actually. Can someone make the church or strangers beneficiaries to their pension or life cover without including any of their immediate beneficiaries, that is parents, spouse, siblings, or children? Jabu, I'll just direct this one at you. Coming from last week, if you recall, because you were here, there was a lot of talk about, as we, advance in age, we should be thinking more about the church, getting smaller houses. We shouldn't be thinking of, building mansions or acquiring cars. We should be thinking about the work of the Lord. And this is the encouragement also that we got from Spirit of Prophecy. So here we seem to have a lot of questions coming up from there. And Lula's question here says, can someone make the church or strangers beneficiaries to their pension or life cover without including any of their immediate parents, spouse, siblings, or children? Bread and butter, Jabu. We could be dealing with these issues. Over to you.
Yeah. It's quite an interesting question. I just want to follow up from what Warren was talking about. Turning to at what stage pension usually should be when a person retires. And then I'm sure most of you saw a very article of how a lady invested 1.0 of her hand-earned cash into a box with some bogus lost everything. And I think this is the reason why it is trying to address this issue. Now, I ask people at law that pension, you must also have a will, who should be your beneficiary. Because ultimately, you see, the pension is supposed to be the beneficiary of your pension. There are two issues that arise. Pension laws of Namibia. The first comes from Section 37. This is why it becomes important when it comes to answering this question. There are instances where a person, we know of many people who have debts. For instance, a person retires, they probably have a mortgage, they've got debts towards furniture or many other things, even the employer. So the law allows the employer to seek a court order to attach that pension. By their very nature are not transferred unless state so in terms of the law. That answers that specific question. So sometimes you to offset the pension and offset it and the leave days if there's debt or anything. Then have a will. Then you can obviously say, if I die, it has to benefit from my pension. And I've seen precedent in countries like Australia, countries like America, where people are given that opportunity to actually say, well, the church can benefit from the pension. But here's the catch. There was a judgment, I think, in Zimbabwe and in both countries. You cannot leave your pension to an institution like a church or a person if your own beneficiaries are covered. So in other words, we've got people who recklessly give out their pension to other people, but they have not catered for their own children. The law cannot allow. I think this is what Warren was also, I heard him correctly, that you see, ultimately, what government is trying to do is safety net where they avoid people becoming a burden on the state with regards to having to get social grants. If you then get your pension and then it goes to unintended beneficiaries, now who will cater for it? It then ends up becoming a burden on the state. So this is why, and even if you die, meaning you die without a will, and it would mean that your immediate beneficiaries who should benefit from the pension, so that it doesn't work in that way. In fact, what I wanted to also, the new FIMA is going to remove D. That's a very important part. This issue of having to apply pensions. So I was talking about the law as it stands, but as that is now going to be removed. So which means now you would not be able, if you owe debts. I think that's one of the issues that is now coming up in terms of that is the law as it stands until FIMA comes into operation. And I'm sure we all know that the contentious part, the government issued a statement a day or two back to say, look, we have consultations on these issues. So this is exactly where it is as things stand. So what happens when whether 37D, because 37D, the problem was beneficiaries would not benefit, and then a person's pension. So I think this was the middle line that was being brought. Yeah.
Can we anticipate it will become more difficult to enter into debt once that comes into effect?
Yeah.
Can we anticipate that?
Yeah. Well, I would definitely. I would not see, because you see, a classic example. Government runs what they call a housing subsidy. What happens there is government will say, go to the bank and see how much you qualify for. If you're in Namibia, go and see how much you qualify for, and then if you get buy a house, the bank will cover you halfway. So maybe if you're supposed to pay, for argument's sake, as a mortgage, then the cover half of that. So the effect of this, if you look at, you see, one thing you must always remember, Sonia, when always look at the Hansard. The Hansard is comes out of Parliament, which takes you through the deliberation. And one of the catch, so the sweetener here is, look, if we are to therefore pensions from people, then it means that when it comes to borrow for subsidy, then it would then become a bit more stringent. Number one. Number two, like age, now we have to look at it. Can you really give a person a subsidy or who's 45 or who's whatever? So I think these are some of the issues. So there's always a 37 did, trust me, was a big problem. I can tell you now how difficult it is, firstly, to attach, how these things drag on forever, and how, even assuming, let me give you a classic example. You go on and on with a person in court, you order against that person. Sometimes the court order itself will even take away the whole pension, cover the debt. So it was a very problematic section to apply. And I believe there are good intentions. So it means now the employers, when they're lending money, they'll obviously look at and consider that aspect to ensure that they do not just, without due diligence, without looking at the credit score, amongst many other issues. So I believe that to be the mischief of it.
Sonia, may I add to Chabu's comment quickly?
Yes, please.
So just I mean, entrust our lawyer friend to come with sections of the Pension Funds Act and numbers and well done. But I think it's a very important point, right? So any pension fund, similar to what the government does, it does to loan against your pension. Depending on there's a limit. It's either 1/3, whatever percentage the fund has decided it would do. What has happened when you pass away or when you retire, that amount has to be deducted what is still owed, and then the rest will be paid out. In the case when someone passes away, money needs to be paid over to their dependents. It becomes a more difficult or harder. What an employer can do in that point in time, and this is just me from my sales hat or my financial, is you can take out credit life on that element. So credit life would say, should this individual pass in that point in time, right? And that's the amount owed will be for passing away, becoming disabled. That the insurer would pay that over, and it will not affect whatever to his nominated beneficiaries. So that's also something that can be looked at. So it could because, like I say, pension funds are meant to be used either to create that wealth, as we know we all need that wealth in our Black community, that your kids has a better chance of buying that house, not being home loans and the likes, or retiring comfortably and getting.
Can I also say my 2 cents? Can I also quickly come in here, please, on that one? So just to give, so in the South African context, that became a challenge a while ago, and so have been protected from that. And so in our law, it says that the pension is a provision and cannot be attached to your will. So you take the proceeds of your retirement fund, whatever you owe or anything like that, because as per our laws, the pension fund is to provide for your financial dependence, and that is what it will do. And so it is protected in that sense. It's protected unless earlier you would wanted to move into an estate and you write your will as such, then it could be done. But in a normal setup, your pension is protected from any major debt that you might have, even like a mortgage, even like a car payment, it is protected from that. I also wanted to bring the other element in of housing loans on a fund. In South Africa, a fund needs to write it into their rules. If it's not in the rules, it's not that there will be housing loans against the pension fund. So for instance, in our case, the church does not have housing loans on the fund, housing allowance as an employer given to members. Have housing loans on our fund. And in so do, even though our members are always asking me to have it, I tell them we have housing allowance and so we won't have home loans, because sad to say, people will always want more money and they'll look for every can get a source of income, even to their own detriment, even though they know they should be saving for retirement, always looking for another source of income. Sad, but very true.
Maybe because we are hungry now. Why?
Oh, you sound so familiar.
Years to come.
The problem.
Agreed.
I'm hungry now. Yeah. but Ruth, if it were possible, I mean, has come in here and said we can make up a will where we can choose who benefits from our estate. And if a member give everything to the church to the detriment of his family, would it be right for the church to accept that, knowing that he isn't getting anything from member X who has died and left the church?
So a member cannot leave everything to the church. In our context, only the life cover be given to whoever is stated in the beneficiaries. But the pension component is always decided by the trustees. Always decided by the trustees. So from that angle, thank you, Andrew. My laptop charger was, yeah. So from that angle, the pension component must be trustees. The life cover can be.
I'm talking about it away from the life cover. We know that are touching this, but I'm talking about things where the law cannot control, where, you know, in my final days, I'm convicted that I need to give, you know, to the ministry. I need to give to the church. I give my house, my car, and everything, but my own, leave nothing for the family. Would it be right for the church to accept this, full well that I have left nothing for my family at all?
I don't think it would be right. I mean, definitely, if it's to the detriment of a person's family, I certainly would question that such a donation or a beneficiary or a will for that matter. I would also want to say that, as far as I know, and Jabu can confirm, any will can be contested if it's unrealistic, especially if the legal dependence of a person has not been considered, and then any will or any can be contested because, of course, our financial dependence should take preference first.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that I highlighted earlier. Sorry, just to add on, that's the point I highlighted earlier, that wills are contestable as long as there are, for instance, relevant guidelines, show form of a substance. But there are instances where we seek to disinherit those who are supposed to benefit. That is why, if you heard me earlier, I said, look, to be donating X amount of money to some other people when your beneficiaries do not benefit. The whole reason, I said earlier again, you would not want to burden the state with those with those specific people or those specific things. And by its very nature, the whole purpose of pensions, and all these things we're talking about, life cover, I think Warren, it's a wealth creation too. And because it's a wealth creation, sure that your beneficiaries perpetuate or get this, you have to ensure that you cover for them and people. I was reading an interesting story of a will recently that was set aside of someone who decided he was going to give, I think it was about 500,000 Australian dollars. But here, his children, out with his ex-wife, he decided he wanted to fix them, so they were not going to benefit. In a court of law, will never stand. So when we also make, or whenever we set up our trusts, we always need to be very careful to ensure that um, um, the ones who actually when we pass away, our beneficiaries, yes, that's the word, our beneficiaries or our progeny will not suffer, or are not going to suffer that specific the brunt of whatever it is that happens to us. So this is very important, and I see also FIMA is going to come up with regulations. In fact, I saw a portion there where when you look at the Hansard, they also want to come up with regulations to ensure that they tighten where pension funds will go to, so that scams do not come in. Remember this girl who ended up losing 1.7 million to a scammer? That they're trying to come up with those regulations also to ensure that the rightful beneficiaries actually benefit ultimately, and ensure that the state is not burdened by these problems.
Thank you so much, Denford. Here, Ruth's earlier comment, if you have a family or beneficiaries, then I think giving the bulk or all your money to the church may not be wise. Your labor and sweat was for the family, but now when you're dead, you want to pay all that gained potential to another body to the detriment of your family. No ways. That's a very good comment there coming from Denford. Warren, we have another question here that we received during the week, and the question says, can we utilize life covers as scission for our debts?
You can. You previously, before, I think it will happen 2 months ago, you could only seed, for example, one. You could only have a session on one session, right? But now you could have multiple sessions. So you can, for example, if you have a life cover for 5 million, your house is 1 million, you could seed that house, you use 2 million, so you could have multiple sessions on your life cover at the moment. Previously, it was only one life cover.
So you can enjoy everything now and then you pay for it when you're dead, in other words.
No, know what secession means. What it means is you take out a life cover. No, you take out the life cover, right, to be able to pay towards something. For example, payment to buy a property, you need a life cover to that value or more. So then what would happen is the home loan department of that bank will seed for that amount, so that if you pass away, first right on whatever is owed to them on that session. But now you can see multiple.
Life cover, you wouldn't have that collateral to fall back on. Difficult to get it. But now, because of life cover, you get it now.
Because it stands as the collateral.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much for that one. Thank you, Kitso, as well. So I think I'll direct this one at you, Ruth. Kitso is asking here and says, if the church independent pension entity, what safety net does it have if the pension invested fails?
It has a pension, not an independent entity. We are invested within a life insurer, like Momentum. We are insured in Sanlam, and they carry all the risk for our. So we are not independent as in freestanding, as in we have our own investment and we manage our own investment. We don't. We are insured through Sanlam, and our investments are done via them, and that holds, and some of the risk is vested with them. Of course, there's the global risk, like now with COVID-19, the markets were all whacked, whether church or outside, all the global market, the surge of COVID-19. So we aren't fully independent in terms of investments. We are with an insurer is covered for eventualities.
May I maybe add on that as well? So what happens there is, so there's different pension funds. You have a standalone pension fund, and then you have an umbrella pension fund. But those pension boards of trustees, and it's their fiduciary duty to ensure that whatever member participating employer in the case of our umbrella fund, of that fund, that the promise that has been made in terms of the service providers that they use from an insurer point of view, service provider from an actuary point of view, service provider from an they meet the mandates that's given through to them. And now the that will land on the 1st of October is previously you duty as a trustee that should something happen, that fiduciary duty would cover you. Trustees make a mistake or if there was an oversight. Now saying is that we will go after Warren in his personal capacity. So now the burden is even for a trustee or a board of trustees that whatever promise is made ultimately to the member that fund that actually happens.
Yes. Can I add one also? Sorry.
Yeah.
Because
yes, please go ahead.
with the FIMA, what is going to happen now is the board of trustees is the us will have a say on who should be board of trustees. I think FIMA has got that now. I think we spoke about this. It would mean basically, usually what is do now, they hide behind what we call the veil of the company. So where they say, look, I'm just a member and the company basically the one that should bear the brunt of this. But what FIMA is do what we do piercing through the veil. So in other words, hold these people accountable under the circumstances because of the very aspect of misappropriation of funds and so on, and also the fiduciary basically is a relationship of trust, and most of the time people try to hide behind the veil of the company. So now I think a specific say to a certain extent when it comes to the trustees that you have to sit on that specific and also have them out, because you see a situation where board of trustees come in from somewhere, sometimes do not know these people, and even if you do, holding them accountable is a very difficult thing because the veil of the company. So what FIMA is doing is trying to pierce through that veil. Warren has spoken about this, and it's a very interesting thing. But I know it will be tested in a court of law. People will take this issue to court because the argument will be, I am a trustee. Yes, I sit as a trustee, but why should you hold me liable? Because sometimes when I do things, I do them in the name of a company. It's going to be a very interesting issue, and there might be a lawsuit on that aspect.
For that one. Thank you, Lulu, for your very interesting question. Ruth, let me tell you, if someone was not tithing all their life, then decide to convert their pension to tithing at the detriment of beneficiaries, justifiable. She goes on to say that some people choose not to pay tithe and have included in their will that their pension will be the repayment of that tithe.
No. Like I said to you, within the context, that's not even possible. That's really not possible.
This goes back to what I'm saying, that you can enjoy it now and pay for it when I'm dead, so I don't have to type now. Dead. Why are you shaking his head? Go ahead.
Never. No. Remind the listeners that your pension is really protected by the because it's a provision. It's a provision to take care of those who are financially dependent on you, and that is how the laws protect the pension money so that it will be intended to do. So no, you cannot pay your tithe from your pension when you retire. No, you cannot do that.
Quickly jump in.
That's a big no. All right. Thank you so much. Yeah. All right.
So I think it's important for the listeners for us to maybe position what I mean by pension, right? So pension, pre-retirement, post-retirement, meaning It's deducted from your, it's taxed. So that's the part of the pension that you can't decide afterwards, when passed or you have retired and there's tax. You can't take that money because when the pension fund, you can only transfer it from one to the other pool fund for the various elements, no tax element, and the tax only comes retirement. So it's not that any money is allowed in a pension. It is only money between you and your employer before it's deducted that it goes into a, or you have changed employers and you want to move what previous employer to your new employer.
Okay.
I hope positions it slightly better.
Repositioning it throughout the whole show. But it helps. Thank you so much. Warren, let me give. Last week, we were informed not to spend a lot of money on our pension because there's a risk that we may funds if the economy becomes a hyperinflation. About this last week, that due to hyperinflation that has happened in other countries, people have woken up one day and lost everything that they invested in their pensions. So this is just a follow-up to that. I'm just giving. So the question goes on to say, so should we then invest little money in our retirement and rely on relatives to take us? Warren, as a financial advisor.
So I
of hyperinflation, I could put everything there.
So I disagree. I think there's only really, in my knowledge, country that I do know of that was unfortunately affected by hyperinflation, and that's Zimbabwe. And I think maybe it stems from. I disagree that the pension fund is possibly. I think it's the best place to be able to save towards your retirement. The more you can do so, the better, right? Because for the mere fact that whatever agreement between you and your employer gives a portion. Whatever you put on top of that can still be, you could still deductibility towards the end of every financial year, and that money is also given back to you. Place, and not because I'm in the industry, but because this has been researched. This has been, people have written papers on it. People have collaborated on papers on it. I've written, Harvard articles on it. Is the best place for you to be able to save money. So that same scenario of hyperinflation could happen when you in your traditional balanced or managed, and then you have zero protection there as well. The hyperinflation does in pension fund and another type of fund, because ideally they all are or portions of your pension fund as a capital guaranteed in the market, right? But the principle, the element of what FIMA is trying to do here is the then be on the trustees, and these need to be professional individuals that quite some time, that know what they're doing, that they employ service providers, your asset consultants, your fund managers, your principal officers, employ the correct service providers. They the right strategies within their structure, because a pension fund is a separate legal entity on its own, that they have the right risk-based supervision, the right risk-based strategies, policies, all of those things implemented to ensure that whatever is on that you will be getting out in terms of benefit element is what you possibly will be getting as close as possible. From an investment point of view, that's not always possible. Funds do promise that we do CPI plus 5, and then they don't always. It becomes a trustee's responsibility to say, we've noticed that you're not getting close to the promise that you've given. We might terms and swap you out with another investment manager, but that becomes the responsibility, as that promise was given to their members. Of the firm belief that whatever you can save as additional voluntary your bonus before it's taxed, if you can increase your member contribution, so because in a pension fund structure is the best place for you to be able to save.
Thank you so much. Thank you, because not many of us can make those other investments. So this would be a good plan can get involved in, unless, of course, if Zimbabwe happens to you. Jabu? Okay, just checking.
Can you hear me?
All right, perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah. Yeah. All right, Jabu, we have a question here. I have been married for 13 years. I recently came across his will and realized that I was not one of the beneficiaries. This has much tension as I realized he is planning to leave most of the assets we have worked to his family members. Am I wrong to feel this way?
Now, let me make it very clear. But you see, when people consult me on wills, especially couples, I always advise them to avoid these scenarios. Do a joint will, exactly to avoid these type of scenarios. Of course, it's more so if they're married in community. Even if it's out of and with accrual, you must ensure you have a joint will. Or alternatively, if you are doing separate wills, please your partner is aware of what it is that is in your will. Now, it is so interesting that here is a lady that she has been disinherited from a will. She's been disinherited. I find the funny side to this thing, and it happens. It really on a
You won't
day-to-day
eat
basis.
until death do us part.
Absolutely. So what is always advisable is, yes, she can actually challenge this will. The only unfortunate thing now is she has to challenge this will. Guy has died. Probably if she does that, then you will quickly change the will and ensure that it doesn't disinherit it, because at law, definitely you cannot disinherit either it's a beneficiary or a spouse, a child, or because that very will by its very nature becomes a nullity. You see, Sonia, things there's what we call something which is null and void. Nope, it has nothing at law. Then we have something called voidable. Voidable is void until certain conditions are met. So, and changes the will, it will be void. It will be voidable. So, under the circumstances, it is a nullity. She should try by all that she gets that thing sorted out. And I must hasten to point out this: she must not worry what people are going to say in society. They are going to go after this poor woman and say, you see, she's greedy. How can she take this person to court now over a will? She's trying by all means. You know, we live in a misogynistic and patriarchal society where women are objectified and as people who are very important, but it is within her rights to do so. Obviously, try by all means to ensure that you talk to the husband, mediate with him. He might be angry. How did you discover this? But these things should not be a secret when it comes to couples. But I always urge couples, try you do these things jointly so that you avoid this very scenario ultimately. And I also is also going to try and make sure it covers this thing for people who die interstate. To ensure house is the one that is taken care of. I tell you something. I know fear. You see the problem with our society. People isolate things from FIMA that are not about and blow a lot of noise or stuff about that specific aspect. But there are so many other positives if you look at that act in its totality, really, and it also ensuring that spouses are also covered. Because why this woman has to do this now is because death, she's now going to face also the problem of relatives. In our African society, we must never run away from that. Especially from the men's side, there are problem because they'll say, but this is what the will says. In fact, they already want to do from status, and then they'll have ammunition, and whether rightfully or wrongfully, and then it means you emotionally, financially, physically. best to beat this whole situation pertaining to a will which is already enough from the beginning.
Thank you so much. The comments are flowing in here on the chat section based on this. Nikki here says absolutely wicked, and I also see comments of serious infidel. There's a lot of learning happening here. Null and void, no ratification. Void until something happens. We are learning. Keep watching Real Talk today, and we can a lot indeed. Now, Ruth, should a pension fund member fund credits to guarantee housing loans by third-party institutions or grant the loans directly to members from the fund?
So, in the that I come from previously, before I joined the church, practice for a fund to have a housing loan, the money to the member. It's not policed. If the member buys a car with the money, it's not policed. The member is encouraged to pay it back, but if the member doesn't, it will just be deducted off their fund credit. Can they control whether the member gives it to a third party? No, the fund whether the member gives it to a third party. In our environment within the church, we do not against our fund simply because we have a housing allowance as a benefit from the employer. So in that context, I do believe that when a member gets a housing loan, they can do with that money as they please. They can pay it back if they are by the means to, but if they don't, it will just be deducted from the fund credit.
May I possibly jump in there?
Yes, please.
Just on because the either or the service provider positions that I sat on was completely different, right? So in that very element of what I think what the government is currently trying to do with, instructing your preservation funds, what funds have done is, so it's called a pension back, housing loan. You need to be able to use it to either do renovations or to buy a house. So the fund has said, so we will, however, we put in measures or mandates or requirements from our side to ensure that it's not money that's used to pay off a loan or to give to use for a short left. So you need it for specific things. So the fund would then say, you apply for this home loan. We need the value that you want. We need the contractor and approved contractors. We will need write a certain documentation from. We need all of those elements before the fund would say, yes, we approve that. What the fund have put in place to ensure that people don't misuse this benefit. Because people do oftentimes misuse these benefits for other means. So those are different elements that funds have put in place now. Is not used for something different than what it's meant to.
All right. Warren, let's talk about when things go wrong. Like, where should pension fund monies be invested? Where there is a poor investment, happened in the USA, where billions of pensioners' monies were lost. Can pensioners reinvest for their pension, or does it become a sunk cost? You've taken the money, you've invested it, but it's a bet, and all this money is gone. What happens to all that lost money?
Very good question, right? So I don't know if I can answer the question by saying, this and this is so measurements that or requirements that you do before money is invested. By law, the law regulates say offshore. This is that you can invest offshore. Asset manager point of view also, they also have within their businesses to say this is that we follow to ensure that this is a valid investing in. They do bench testing, they do peer testing, all of these different requirements in terms of tests to ensure that these aren't entities that are sort of and there's risks involved, right? So from a pension fund point of view, regulated principles, it's very rare now that pension funds would invest into an organization that will go belly up the next day, because the regulator regulates this unlisted investments. There's a portion to say this is the minimum amount, this is what you need to look at, this is the track record, that you go through your due diligences from the trustees. From a fund point of view, you have audit subcommittee, you have your committee. This is the responsibilities of those individuals to ensure all of the checks and balances are made at that point in time. Because say that again, they'll come after a warrant. We will not have.
Okay. To know we may come after you. We are talking about pension funds and life covers. We will be of today's program, but we wouldn't want to close you out. So if you have a question or comment, now is your time to ask that. But Jabu, another question here that came up. The question says, I have 3 children. I informed them that they are beneficiaries to my life pension fund. Is it wise to do so, or should I only in the will? In other words, should the children
included? No. The challenge with myths we have in Africa. Look, we a society which is full of myths, a society full of a society full of these are realities we face on a day-to-day basis. So we always advise people, please, if you want your children to wish you an early death, just make sure they do not know. The best thing you can always tell people is to tell them that, listen, I have a will which is at so and so, which is, here lots of places where wills are written. You can, the storms would write a will, the banks, and so on, without this content of it. Because the reality of the matter, sudden, you will see your children giving you these looks every day when you're passing through. In their hearts, they'll be like, is this topic going to leave us? Or something along those lines. Realities. We have seen cases. I think I saw 2 cases. One in Zimbabwe, I think it was in Lesotho, Swaziland, who killed their parents so that they could quickly because it is close to them. This is what you're going to inherit. This is what you're going to. These children were like, oh, so this is all meant for us. So the bottom line is they should never that is there. Look, ultimately, everyone knows, as long as you work, everyone knows, even your children, they know that is something they will know. They may not know how much it is, but when it comes to all these other tangible gifts, and you see, this is why the law says you cannot just, we have laws also, we've got, I think also in South Africa, where if you order your parent or hit on something, you should benefit from, you not inherit from them. It's all in black and white. So the advice, by all means, do not do these things, especially the court. This is why, remember, in a will, beneficiaries are never witnesses. They cannot witness for this very reason. Yes.
Thank you. I have. Oh, you okay. Can I pose this question to our time with her is limited. We just have and then can I come back to you, Warren? Is that okay? So Ruth, the question here says, should our pensions be in equity instruments or money market instruments? Which type of instruments does the church pension invest in?
Okay, so once again, I think we touched on it earlier, but let me say investment platforms are very the pension fund laws. so much in equity, so much in overseas, local. So it's very regulated. In the church instance, we have a very crafted portfolio based on the ethical investment. Monies are not invested in anything tobacco or gambling. A very specially crafted portfolio. Also, equities. So it has been balanced. We have as well, of course, local investment as. So yes, protected in the sense that aspect we wanted to be investment, and I must say the Lord, our we recently did a market survey about a year ago just to see how is our portfolio against like Apple, how we're doing, and you'd be amazed. It's against the odds that we could do well because where the investments, where the high returns are, but God has have been doing exceptionally well because we believe the right thing by not investing. So yeah, we are balanced, but it is controlled as far as the pension laws are concerned. So overseas, so much for money markets. So it is controlled like that, and we follow the stipulation controlled by Regulation 28.
One last question, and then I think we can let you go. Discouraged life covers. What has changed in the 21st century?
I looked at that question when I received the questions, and this we live and I when I joined sense of reading on it, and I want to say this that yes, we in the past but you must understand we live in a world and we occupy and are heaven bound, but we live here, and whilst we are living here, we need to be prepared. We want to when we get to retirement and there's not a provision made, and then we say, but what kind of church did we work? Provision made. We are our aim for to be rich when they're in retirement. None of our members are rich. Our aim is to make sure that our members are comfortable and that they are able to live in a manner at the end of working for God's church. So our structure isn't exorbitant in terms of high amounts of life enrich themselves, but it is to protect the member's family, make sure that when we retire, it is biblical. They of the Levites. That is what God had prescribed. To take care of the Levites, and we have to take care for God's church. When they get to retirement, they need to be taken care of. Approach like that. That is that we take within the church.
Thank you so much, Ruth, and thank you for joining us here on Real Talk. We are very happy to have you joining us. Light on what is happening within the church, and we hope to have you coming back again sometime soon.
Yeah, sure. It's been wonderful to share the platform with you guys in Namibia and everywhere else. Those viewing from everywhere else, and I'm another time and share my perspective on and what he wants us to do and how we can be a part of that. Thank you so much, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you. And I'll remain with the two gentlemen here as we're to round up here on Real Talk. Warren, you wanted to say something earlier. In fact, you were burning to say something earlier.
Yeah, so I don't disagree, right? But I do think as hide behind this tradition and superstition thing, and you can't talk about it because your kids will wish you dead and stuff. But I think we also need to take a very mature approach on certain things. And from a financial advisor point of view, I always say that yes, your it's not advisable to go into detail in terms of what your beneficiaries, your kids, and your wife would be getting should you pass away. But it is advisable to inform them that, should I pass, this is what you need to do. Should I pass, Warren is my advisor. Please ensure that you reach out to him. He will ensure that he gives you this and this information. To start having the difficult conversations about putting a will in place, talking about financial, not inclusion, but financial literacy, ensuring that, we do better today than what we did tomorrow, because that's the only way that us as a nation, and I mean Black people, will move forward. We keep on making the same mistakes and hoping for a different outcome, right? So it is advisable that those channels are also still followed. That I have seen too many times where people would pass away and their families don't even know that, yes, they work, but sometimes people, well, I'm talking about the blue collar workers now, they work, they go through their pay slips on a monthly basis to see what is this pension thing and what does it really mean. Because I do a lot of financial literacies where I sit with people and I explain what debt is, what a bank account is, what insurance is, what pension is, and they didn't know. So it is advisable conversations, and we do inform our next of kin and our families that this is what I have, because if we don't, an insurer would have to go through so many hoops to be able to ultimately ensure that this money is then paid over to either a kid or a wife or a benefit, and then they can't feed themselves. So we should have these conversations and these and inform at least that one son or that one person that you trust. This is the person that you need to go to should I pass away.
Would you say the same, Warren, or okay? When it comes to life cover, we've heard of stories of people who have died because the beneficiary can't wait to claim the life cover. Would you say the same, that it's advisable to let your spouse or whoever is benefiting from you when it comes to life cover?
So I believe in the law taking it's if you kill someone, right, it will ultimately be found out. So then you're not eligible, and there's stuff that will proceed. So I'm not saying it's give them the amount. I'm just saying that you are married to this person. There's a relationship there, right? Must be a relationship of trust. That relationship of trust means that you need to play open cards. Rightfully, like previously, the wife just found that she was excluded from a will. I don't know from my side, but I'm an advisor in a certain industry. That lawyer that wrote that will in itself should have known that you can't do that. So there's a lot of conversations that I feel that we need to have. Might be hard ones, but these are things that we need to know from and share.
Mm-hmm. All right,
look, I think what we are basically agreeing is just the angle. What I'm saying is this: ultimately, conversations need to be had, right? Let me split it into two parts. That's why you heard me saying earlier on, if you have a spouse, there is absolutely no way. I do not expect your spouse not to be aware really of what is going on, whether it's got to do with asset accumulation or liability accumulation. Surely that person should have a blow-by-blow account of what's going on. But realistically, we have situations where I've seen it also. There was a survey done. 40% do not know, for instance, how much their spouse earns or what their spouse does. There are scenarios like this, or they've never seen their pay slips, and that poses a serious problem. Conversations need to be had with obviously with your spouse or the other person. My point of departure is having this type of conversation with, say, for instance, your children or with your other relatives. Probably to an extent you might have this, like for instance, to say, well, Warren is my advisor, of course. Simon Storms wrote my will, of course. The person you can talk to is so and so, their number is so and so. This is where you get some of these things. I believe that is, I believe technically on all those things. The problem we have is financial literacy is usually a taboo within our communities. People do not want to openly discuss issues of this. I'll give you an example. Just recently, I was discussing with the family. They were talking about they want to draw up a will and everything. And when this couple came, they were just asking me about it. Can you believe it that 90% of what the man was talking about, the woman didn't even know about it? These are the practical problems we have. And one of the major, biggest problems, and this is where Warren, I would also agree with you, is this, and I have to say this openly. The fruit of our loins as men, we sometimes try to run away from these conversations because we have planted some fruits of our loins somewhere else. And because we have done that, we are trying by all means to avoid these conversations. But lo and behold, the fruit of our loins always have a way of coming out. And this is why these conversations need to be had. Painful as they are, to say, listen, unfortunately or fortunately, I have a fruit of my loins at street number so and so, house number 677. Sorry if there's anyone with that street number. I'm just saying, hypothetically. So that is where I'm saying my point of departure is. But realistically, there was also a study done where children who were told what their inheritance was, most of those spoiled brats, most of them never took life seriously because they thought everything is just going to fall onto their plates. And this is why there was that Warren Buffett, for instance, and Bill Gates came up with, should our kids inherit whatever it is that we have, wealthy as they are? Those are very wealthy people. And they came up with what they call the giving pledge, to say, we are going to give away everything that we have worked for. Do not have this sense of entitlement. I think this is the issue that I was trying to emphasize. But there's absolutely nothing wrong in making sure that people know what the plans are. They are financially made to. There are people who now insert in their wills, for instance, that should have access to this, let's say, to this home or to these funds when they probably turn 25 or 21, whichever is applicable. We have seen wills like that. So in essence, that can be done because sometimes children are immature to be able to handle large sums of money. And at the end of the day, you have that specific problem. So whatever it is that you are working towards is blown away like mist, all because of those things. So I think agreeing, that's probably the angle that I thought I should also bring.
And especially, I said as a trustee on a fund, and that has always been the case. Once you start, because you have 12 months to look for all of the kids, and we would always take that stance, unfortunately, if it comes to a man, that we would use the maximum amount of time, because most of the time, there is a few children that has not been added as your kids.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Up here on Real Talk, it's been a very interesting discussion. The men have been very open and very honest about what's going on there, and no wonder the wives are getting shocked when they discover wills, because a certain information of number so and so down the start coming up. But Jabu, why this question also during the week based on what we discussed last week. Now, if you recall, last week there was an opinion that was shared among the panel that it would not be wise, and this is just follow up also to what you've just talked about, that leaving so much wealth to children make them spoiled. You know, even the very rich have discovered it. You gave examples of Warren and things like that. That they would rather give it away so that the children could learn to work, to earn something for themselves, as opposed to just getting things. And Elder Kiangi brought this, the best thing that you could possibly do is to teach them how to fish than just to give them the fish themselves. So this is a question coming from that. Now, why should we not leave health to our children? Are we not increasing black tax and the gap that already exists between whites and blacks.
Yeah, I think Warren touched on this issue at some point. Where look, I think if you heard in my previous contribution, I believe there is absolutely nothing wrong with generational wealth. The Bible itself, Job left generational wealth for his children. Remember, twice, triple more after whatever happened to him. People in the Bible heard that. What I'm saying is the challenge is we should not allow our children or those to sit on their laurels and believe and think that they are going to be sustained, okay, by whatever it is that their parents have worked for. This is exactly why, and I think Warren has been emphasizing the issue of financial literacy and myself. This is why those children, you see, there's a saying, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach him how to fish, you can feed him for a lifetime. What Indians, Jews do, they leave their children with generational wealth, but within that generational wealth, they teach them how to fish, meaning that generational wealth will be perpetuated. They will not lose it. In other words, so they already start teaching them and inculcating some of these values in them as they grow, right? That though they might have generational wealth, and remember, it is tied away somewhere. You see, it is a folly, and you are so right from this question, even as an answer itself. It is a folly to have this generational wealth or to work, and then ultimately you fail to educate your children, or you go into debt, or there are so many things you don't even give your children a head start in life going forward. You always hear us as people from Africa always say, well, we always have to start from zero. Our parents never left us with anything. But other races, other cultures, they always ensure that they give the people a springboard. But they don't only give them a springboard, they teach them. I want to give you an example. I don't know if you know, there's a shop, and I'll say this shop because it impresses me. Just somewhere close to when you're going to Transnamib in town, in Windhoek, I think there's this service station in town, close to, as if you are going to Transnamib, there's a service station here, and there's a small Indian shop just there on the corner, which sells some nice food. I've seen what has been happening there for the last 3-4 years. That Indian person there has started inculcating the values to his sons. You find that a son who's 2 years old, 3 years old, is already being taught the ropes of that business. And I recall one time when I went in there, I wanted to buy something, and this child at 3 was crying for a sweet. I remember the dad saying to that child, where is the $1 that you saved the other day? And the child says, yeah, bring it, you buy the sweet. I'm not going to give it to you. Buy it, work for it. Though it's our shop, work for the man, work. I'm not going to give you the sweet. That child cried until the tears went dry. He didn't give you the sweet. He said, go ahead, go take the money you buy. You see what is already inculcating that child, that you have to work to get things. And the challenge we have sometimes, we do not teach our children these things. So there is absolutely nothing wrong, nothing satanic with generational wealth. If wealth was a problem, God was going to tell us wealth is a sin. Wealth is not a sin. The only problem is that we unfortunately fail to ensure that our children or our people are financially literate because of the problems we have within our society, where money by its very nature is a taboo topic that we speak about. So whatever the question is, honestly, let us not sit on our laurels and start saying, yeah, I have a problem with us saying rely on other people to take care of you. Because by that very nature, people also have their own issues, have their own problems. It might be perfect on paper, but do not work thinking that you're going to rely on other people to take care of you. That definitely is a very important aspect of life. As I close this down, my own grandmother, she died when she was 95, 2 years ago. Not even a single day. In fact, I would see her own children, that is our parents, the generation which is our parents, asking for money from her because she still believed in working for her things. even when she left this earth, she was still working, right? Yes, I mean, she was old. She wasn't as strong as she was before. I mean, that goes without saying with age. But you find that she actually left quite a good chest wall, a war chest, sorry, a war chest for some people, which is even assisting them and educating them up to today. That is what generational wealth is. And she had said it that any child who passes through my hands will learn how to plant maize, beans, and go and sell it. I'm not going to give them school fees. I'm going to make sure they do so. But at death, some of these people are benefiting from that. That is the distinction. Not that she was wealthy. No, she wasn't. But she managed to leave something for those who would need to be educated. And this is a 95-year-old.
Wow, powerful, powerful. Thank you, Denford, for sharing this link. Denford has just posted a link on the Facebook chat. All right, so the link basically says that Bill Gates' children, the 3 children, will only receive 10 million of the Gates money. This is a billionaire, you know, and they're only going to get 10 million each when he dies. Wow. Warren, are we? I mean, if the billionaires have caught on to this thing that you shouldn't leave your children a lot of money, even when you're gone, and then we have life cover where you can even take out life cover for 100 million for your children, are we not now creating a problem ourselves? Because I mean, earlier you also talked about how life cover, pension funds can be an opportunity to generate wealth. So are we not going to create a bigger problem tomorrow in society if even the rich people have caught on that you can't leave children too much? How much is too much when it comes to life cover?
Yeah. I think we misunderstand this, right? So you're trying to ensure the future of your family, and we misunderstand the fact that that doesn't mean that you splurge and the point here is there still needs to be the element of you need to teach the children how to use money. They need to become comfortable with how to save. I mean, I grew up getting money from my parents, but same as that young dad with the Indians, that when I wanted something, it needed to come from me. That relationship that we have as Black people with money is initially the problem that we need to start addressing. Why do we have such a, if I can call it a love-hate relationship with money initially? Financial literacy needs to be taught in schools at an early age. Kids need to start knowing how to budget in primary school and what money actually is in primary school. Because I think we grow up with this facade of, oh, I can get $1 million and my life will be perfect. I think therein initially lies all of the problems that we have, similar to the government trying to implement these rigorous stuff, because as a nation, clearly we're not making the right decisions. We are wanting to take our retirement savings and fund it for a year and now. That is wrong. I'm not saying that there's elements where you get your outliers where it's really needed because someone else decided, let me rather take that money, educate my kids, and my kids will take care of me or grow my family. There are outliers, but our relationship with money initially is the problem, because yes, splurging money to someone that doesn't understand how to make use of it is wrong. But saying that I'm not going to leave anything for my family so their existence is better than the one that I had is also wrong. So I think therein lies our conundrum. Let's have the conversation of why do we have this bad relationship with money initially as a people, and how do we get beyond it?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And if we would improve our relationship and understanding of money, then you wouldn't get to a point that someone is just itching and waiting for the other to die just to have money, because they've learned, what it means to have a good relationship with money. So they probably wouldn't be waiting for one to die. And that would probably mean that they too can, you can share about what is happening. All right, we have come to the end of our Real Talk discussion for this afternoon, but I will give opportunity for any last remarks to Jabu.
Yeah, I'm just going to tie up and say, look, I think Warren summed it up well. That I think there shouldn't be any fear, because one of the aspects I know in terms of the law is insurance, pensions are well regulated. Of course, look, I always say this, that there's a saying that even with the most secure wall, the most secure wall, there'll always be a hole somewhere. It's a saying. Even the most secure wall. Remember, the Babylonians had the best walls, but we all know what happened. Just one loophole, and as they say, Nebuchadnezzar was conquered in one night. So, in other words, even if there are the best intentions to regulate the laws, there will be issues here and there. That is given. Human beings always try to be ingenious enough to find ways around things. This is why, for instance, even in the IT sphere, we have what we call hackers. You can have the best walls, but people always try to go through them. But one thing people must know is the laws are there to ensure that people's pensions, insurance, and all these things are well covered. And people have the right to question these aspects. And I believe once we have got faith in the Bible as well, like we always do here, and we've got faith in the Lord and faith in what He seeks to assist us in, we will always be okay. And please, please, this is my advice: get financial advisors, people like Warren. The problem with us is we want things for free. But if a financial advisor is going to assist you, he also needs to eat, right? So go and consult him, pay him whatever you need to pay him, and he's going to guide you in a proper way. This is the thing. We always want to take it. We can go and pay to a dentist, we can pay to a doctor, we can pay a lawyer. Financial advisors, we think they're not important. These people are extremely important. If you look at what's happening with how people are falling for scams each and every day in our lives, sorry, this shows you that these people are very important. And once we fail to comprehend that, these things, you can never take them on remote control and think, yeah, well, things are just going to happen. They're just going to happen automatically. Things are just going to fall from the sky. Well, manna fell from the sky, but not now. You need to plan. You need to ensure that your pensions are sorted out. You need to ensure that you know what life cover is, the importance of insurance, why you need it. And this is why I believe people like him are very important. Go to Twitter, follow these people, see what it is that they're saying. I've seen some of the videos just posted of the time when the current finance minister was the Bank of Namibia person. Know what the repo rate is. Follow it. Know what the prime rate is. Follow those things. Know what FIMA is, because it will go to your issue of pension. Go ask these people. When are the days of us having to talk about things that really don't add value to our lives? We need to have serious conversations about things that add, not following the gossip about which Hollywood person is divorcing today and how many kids are they adopting. Yeah, we can follow those things. But what value will it add to our lives if we do not have proper people who can give us right financial advice going forward? That would be my closing remarks.
Thank you so much. And Vicky, they also, I think, agree with you about how the church is not ready for this discussion. But Warren, as you come in on your last remarks before we close, maybe you could tell us what we're typically looking at paying a financial advisor. We understand that you need to eat and we need to be money wise as well.
So of course this is, I mean, one, it's regulated also. Anything, and that's the beauty of the environment that I operate in, right? It's always regulated. There's minimums and there's maximums. Each different insurer has minimums and maximums of what you can pay. As a nominal amount, they usually take a percentage of whatever they are advising you on. So plus it's negotiable. And I always say, I am a bargainer through and through. I will always try and bargain that price down, right? But I'm all about value at the same time. If you bring me value, I am willing to pay for that value. So I think it's specific to the individual, that what they're willing to pay for. But I must say that I completely agree with Jabu. We are not in this point in time in our lives where we could think that we will our circumstance will just change because we're just nice people and it's by virtue of luck. There needs to be a little bit of work that we put into ensuring that our circumstance is better today than it was yesterday. And also I'm a firm believer, if something doesn't add to my table, it's taking away from it, and then it needs to leave also. So also we live in a world where technology has allowed information to be freely available. You don't even have to do much. You follow, like Jabu says, you follow people on Twitter, you follow them on LinkedIn, and just read the stuff that they put out there. Those places are limited because it's not a lot of stuff that you need to read. Take you like 5 minutes to go through it by virtue of what you can post. Just educate yourself a little bit better about stuff. Money is important to all of us. Not everyone wants to be a millionaire, but we want to eat and we want to live, and we want to have a better relationship with money, and better. Not everyone wants to live paycheck to paycheck. So ensure that you take the time to go and see an advisor, and I would advise you to shop around, right? Don't go to the first person and decide to go with that person. Go to there's 5 big insurers in Namibia. Go to all 5. See the person, because this is an important thing, because money is a sensitive topic. Find the person that you have a good rapport with, that you feel that you can trust, and enter into a contract with them. That contract states, if you have other things that you wanted to state in, that contract states what you can and can't discuss. Usually for us as Black people, we don't want to have a Black advisor because we feel that there might be a situation where they will not keep the matter to themselves. But you enter into a contract, right? And if you hear your business on the street because you go to Katutura one day and then you sue that person. You get what I'm saying?
Jabu. Okay, so I'm coming to see you on Monday and I'll be on Wednesday.
Yes, you see? Because you see what I'm saying? I feel this. For me, build a rapport. You trust your gut. If your gut tells Jabu is the man for me, stick to Jabu. But if you feel like Jabu, your rate is a bit high, speak to him about maybe bringing it slightly low. But get a person that you trust with everything, and then you guys grow together. Because it's this thing, you start working, then you become a manager, then you then you have your kid, have a bigger salary, then you buy a house. You want this person to understand. And it's also sort of a relationship that you grow, right? It's a financial one that you grow with a person. They understand everything. And ultimately, one day, should in the event you pass away, your family will know Jabu has always been this guy's financial guy. Go to him because he will tell us the right thing to do. So that's how you should look at this. I don't have like 5 different advisors that give you 5 different products because they don't understand your holistic need. That's my parting words, if I can say that.
Excellent. Lulu, they're supporting you. Says, but actually, financial advisors are not expensive. So, yeah, I'm sure we'll be giving you a ring this coming week. Thank you, Admire, for your comment. Admire says, thank you, Real Talk. Discussions full of substance. And we will close on that on that note. We have kept it real this past 2 weeks. Not an easy topic to discuss, not a topic everybody wants to talk about, but that is the reality, that we cannot get to a point where we can work forever. And what happens if you should be unable to work, or if you will rest in your grave? What will happen to your family when you are no longer around? So be sure to share the link to this program to a friend, to a family member, to anybody really who may need to know about this. And as Warren said, you don't always have to pay for things. You can just watch Real Talk and get free financial advice. Jabu, I will ask you to close in prayer, please.
Shall we pray? Father, we are so grateful for this wonderful you've given us. Thanking you, Lord, for this wonderful topic that we had in the last 2 weeks, Lord. Thank you for bringing us experts like Warren, experts like Ruth, all these people that have spoken to us, Lord. May this not only end in talk, but may it also be about the action. Lord, your word says, a man who listens to this word and does not apply it is like a man who built his house on sand. And when the storms of life come, because they definitely come, it was washed away. But a man who takes this word and applies it in their mind, in their lives, is like that man who built his house upon the rock, such that when the storms of life came, and they will come, he stood firm. May this word, Lord, move to people around the world, not only to with our vicinity, but to everyone else. May it benefit them, Lord, to an extent that, Father, will have a transformed society, Lord, a society that is going to take these issues seriously, so that, Lord, they can take care of their families. Your word says a man who cannot take care of his family is worse than an infidel. And may, Lord forbid, may none of us be found amongst those who are worse than an infidel. We learn, we make mistakes, we fall, we rise, but Lord, be with us. And may you help us to have the humility to learn and to understand what is required of us. Be with us now and bless us, and bless this program. Even those who are going to watch it later, be with them. Bless the Ntini family. Bless Warren's family. Be with them, O Lord, at all times, and grant them wisdom, knowledge, and strength in all that they do. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen, amen, amen. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Warren. It's been wonderful having you, and we're looking forward to having you on Real Talk sometime in the future.
Thank you,
Warren
guys.
Warren has been a gem. He has been fantastic.
And Warren gave you a run for
Thank
your
you.
money.
Thank you.
Whoa, well, no, he is an expert in these things. He eats and breathes this stuff.
It's my bread and butter, guys. My bread and butter.
Yes. He was a brilliant panelist, trust me. It was. I learned a lot from him today.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
And Jabu as well. Thank you as always, Jabu. We will be knocking on your one. And to Sam behind the scenes, our technical person who has been keeping us online, thank you as always for helping us, as well as our producers behind the scenes as well. Thank you for keeping us engaged and continuing to keep us talking real. Until next time, everybody, this is us saying goodbye and blessed week to you all. Sam, would you like to sign us off with a